There we go. Okay. So today I'm going to tie a damselfly nymph, and this was when I started searching online for a nymph that is good for the spring fishing. That was a suggested was to tie a dark damselfly. So damselflies have a lot skinnier body than dragonflies, and they're a lot longer and skinnier, and their eyes tend to be a little more prominent. And I'm just tying them in basic black. And I'm tying it on this whole fly, I'm tying it unweighted because at this time of year, you don't know what you're going to be fishing, shallow or fishing deep. So I'll tie it unweighted. And then if you want to get it down deep, you just use a sinking line or put a little piece of weight in front of it. I don't know about here. In some places you can do that, some places you can't. So, and the dubbing, I've got a couple of different kinds. Some is easier to dub than others. The hook for this one, I want a fairly long shank hook. So what I've got here is this is actually a dry fly hook because again, I want it, if I'm not got to fish it deep, I want it relatively lightweight. So this is a Tiemco dry fly hook. It's a 2x long, 2x long, and it's a size 8. And I've already debarbed it. So I just stick them in the vise. And I'm going to put it, so this is a curved dry fly hook. And I'm doing that because the curved hook, if I tie the tail back here, it kind of keeps in line with the body. If it's a straight eye hook, the tail tends to cock up a little bit. So hook is, thread is just 8/0 black. And so I'm going to start like I usually do with these hooks is I will do a few wraps right behind where the eye is to close that little gap that sometimes if you're fishing a really fine tippet, it can get caught in there. And so I'm going to wrap back down the shank about 4 eye widths of the hook with the thread. And then we'll just trim off the excess. Now, the eyes for this thing, you can use dumbbell eyes. The problem with dumbbell eyes is they're weighted. And if you're going to tie them on, you have to tie them on the bottom in order to flip the hook over so that it's the right way up. So I won't use dumbbell eyes. You can use bead chain. Bead chain works pretty well. You can get a variety of different sizes of bead chain eyes. It's a little tougher to work in between the eyes if you use bead chain. So I happen to have an inventory of what they call mono eyes, which is black eyes that have a little bigger gap in between the two eyes. So you can see from here, there's a fair bit of gap between those. I'm just going to spotlight me here if I can. Let's see if I can get this done. That might make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. And I need to just adjust here so you can see the hook a little better. There we go. I'll be able to see that a little better now. So now that I'm going to come back from the very front of the eye of the hook to the back, I'm going to wind to the full length of that dumbbell eye. And then I'm going to bring it forward just a little bit, about the width of the eye. And I'm going to make just a little bump here with thread. And at that point, I'll hold the eye behind the bump, go diagonally across a couple of times, and then bring the thread in front and go diagonally across a couple of times. And then I'm just going to wig a little bit so that the eyes are even on either side of the hook shank. Once I've got that, you can see I've got a couple of the dumbbell eyes width in front of the where they're tied in. So that's about where I want. I'm going to go cross wrap one way and then the other way to make sure the eyes are at right angles to the hook shank and right on top. So far, so good. Now, the next thing on this fly, pretty straightforward, is I'm going to use some black saddle, the rooster saddle. So it's got a fair bit of webby material at the base of the feathers. And so I'm going to come in here and find a feather in this batch that has a pretty broad plume of barbs at the bottom of the feather, because I want to have a pretty decent length of tail. And so I'll take him out like that. And I'll take some of the really fuzzy stuff off the bottom of that thing so that I can get at the stuff that's not too fluffy, but it's fairly white. And what I'll do is I'll pull a batch by the tips off of each side of that feather stem. Come on, stay still. Ah, you warned me. So now I've got a reasonable clump of feather of that stuff. And I'm going to start right behind, almost right behind the eyes. Square it up. And I'm just going to get that first wrap and double check the length. I want the length of the tail to be a little less than shank length behind the bend. And I'm just going to wrap that down on the hook shank till I get to where the barb used to be. I'm not going to take it back too far around the end of the hook. And then I'll wrap in behind to keep it from wrapping around the shank. Now, for some reason, I ended up with a lot less in the number of barbs that I wanted. So I'm going to grab another chunk of them and match up the tail length and tie it in, just so that I have a little bit of a more bulky tail. Again, right back to the barb point. And I'll, like I say, wrap one wrap behind, underneath, and around, just to keep that tail from wrapping around the shank. And then I want a rib, a little bit of flash on the rib. And the trick with that is to get some pardon me while I fiddle around here. Okay, so I got some fine silver wire, and I will take that off the spool. And again, what I'll do is I'll bring my thread up and I'll cock tie this wire in right behind the eyes. And this adds a little bit of weight to the shank, but not too much. And I'll wrap that down the shank on the far side of the hook, all the way down to where the tail is. And I'll get that put away. Now for dubbing, I have some choices now. I first tried this stuff, which is Arizona Black Magic. The problem, and I'll show you why I switched away from that, because put a little bit on. Some of these synthetic dubbings don't adhere very well to the thread. So I'm just going to just dab a little bit of wax on here. And then I'll show you what happens when you use this stuff. I've already taken this dubbing material and chopped it up a bit. And when I try and put it on the thread, it goes all spiky. This one's not too bad because I've already chopped it a bit. But when you try to wrap, you see how it doesn't adhere to the thread. It just goes sideways. So I'm just going to just quickly wrap this up to give a little bit of an underbite. But see how it comes off of the thread, even though I've waxed it. So I don't know I think with this stuff, you pretty much are stuck with a dubbing loop. So we'll heck with that.
You can lick your fingers.
Yeah, that
and then roll it. And then
didn't help a whole lot, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
This stuff is it's Arizona and a dubbing, and it really is quite long fibers, and it's stiff. It doesn't really want to adhere. So that was just to give you an idea. You got to piss around with the dubbing a little bit to find stuff that works. So what I've got here is I've got a box I've had for some time of synthetic living fiber SLF dubbing in multiple colors. So I've got some black, and it's a much finer dub. You can see it, and it doesn't have those coarse fibers that kind of get in the way. So I'll get a little bit more wax on that thread and on my fingers. And then I just start twisting the dubbing on the thread. Now this stuff, it sits on there really nice. So I think with any of these synthetic materials, you kind of have to play around a bit till you find out which dubbing goes on the way you want it. Some of the artificial ones are okay because they chopped it up fine enough, or it's not a coarse enough fiber that it gets hung up trying to wrap it on the thread. You want one that's dubbing that has fairly short fibers, I think, to get it to wrap on the thread properly. Otherwise, like I say, that other stuff, it kind of clumps up.
Yeah, when I was trying out-bodied usuals for chili, I was using the super fine dubbing from Superfly.
Yeah.
And you got to cut it up because
yeah,
if you don't, it's going to give you the fit just like this stuff's giving you.
Yeah.
And it's tough to make a real fine body with it.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to do here is make a body that's relatively fine that tapers a little bit as I go forward. So I'm going to make the dubbing rope just a teeny bit thicker as I get further up the shank. And maybe do some multiple wraps so that as you get further, the body tends to get tapered a bit. So you can see it's starting to get a little thicker. I don't want too thick. And a little more. And then when I get up to about the width of the eyes, behind where the eyes are, I stop dubbing. And then I'll take my rib and I'll do like 3, maybe at the most 4 wraps up the body. And then get on the top of it. Back over. And then we'll see if I can get this thing to come off. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. It's not gonna. That particular wire is a little bit tougher than other wires. Okay, now the next trick is to get the wing case. So for a wing case, I'm just gonna take my pheasant tail and I'll take a chunk of it that is probably gap of the hook wide, and I will pull them out not at about a 45-degree angle and get my scissors in here and snip them away from the shank. And then I will take them and turn them so that the pattern side of the pheasant tail is facing down. We're off the end. And I'll set that down with the butts, the colored side, the pattern side facing down, and the butts just in between the eyes. And I'll tie that down onto the hook shank, keeping the pheasant tail flat on top of the hook. So there we go. And then I'll get my dubbing again. And I'll just touch it up and start dubbing again. Only this time I'm going to make a fairly robust dubbing rope because I want a fairly thick thorax on this thing. And we'll wrap starting right where the pheasant tail is tied in on top of the hook. We'll wrap up to the eyes. I still need some more. So what I want is the thorax to be at least twice as round in diameter as the body. Maybe even a little more than that. Some more. Just a hair more, so to speak. Get it good and thick. And then I'll just do a quick wrap in between the eyes, going front and back. Bring my thread in front of the eyes. And I'll just do one teeny little bit of dubbing right in front of the eyes, just a small amount. And this is just to make it easier to tie down the fibers when I pull them forward. There we go. I'll take my pheasant tail and pull them forward like that, right over top and between the eyes of the hook, and flatten them out on top. Do a wrap in front of the eyes. 2, 3. And then when I got that, then I'm going to take these tips and I'm going to pull them around the eye of the hook and back underneath towards the hook point, and wrap over top of that. And then just a teeny tiny bit of dubbing to cover up that little bit of thread at the front and give this guy a little bit of a nose. Slide it up. And by doing this, not only do you cover up that little bit of hook shank in front, you kind of give him a little bit of a bulky nose like that. I'm going to come in and I will whip finish. being ornery this morning. That's better. I just need to take my spot because I got a couple of these guys that kind of got trapped in the wrong spot. That's being ornery. Being ornery today. There we go. There we go. That's better. So I'm using the thread to try and push those pheasant tail fibers down underneath between the eyes. Now I can finish it. Okay. And at this point, I'm going to just give it some legs, and I'll take my scissors and pull this stuff down, and then I'll cut them off just at the back of where the shell is. So now I've got some legs that hang down underneath. And if you want, you can thin those out a little bit. I don't bother. I think you just want to have something under here that creates a little bit of movement as if they're legs on the fly. And that's him. Pretty straightforward. Fairly simplified. Okay. Any questions?
No, I like it.
That's good. Very nice fly.
It's very simplified, and because it's long and skinny, I think it will work pretty well as a damsel imitation. I'm not sure how big the early season damsels are around here. You could probably tie it in a couple of different size hook lengths, but it's that thin body profile with the bulky thorax that gives that, and then the legs that give it that damselfly appearance. There we go. So I will remove the spotlight. We'll go back if I can go back to gallery view. There we go. Okay. So Florin, you're up.
Well, you caught me in the middle of.
Yeah, this went faster than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, well, I thought you're going to do two patterns.
No, I was just the one.
Just the one. Ah,
Yeah,
oh, well.
we've had, like it was said to earlier, the guy earlier, we've had a house guest all week, so things have been a little busy.
Okay. Well, yeah, I know busy. All right. Well, seeing as you caught me in the middle of it, I may as well complete this fly.
Sure.
This is supposed to be a professor. So a red tail, a sparkly yarn body, and a little bit of a rib. I have this kind of tinsely rib. It's quite fine. I think I must have bought this in a sewing shop like ages ago. And it's got a thread core, and then it's like a tinsel. And then I'm going to put some mallard for a wing. I'm going to fold it a little bit, and then I'm going to roll it a bit between my fingers so it doesn't come out too ugly when I put it on the fly. has a bit of a natural curvature to it, but it's not uniformly curved. So this is not going to be a very pretty thing. So measure it so it doesn't come too long. So about to halfway into the tail. And secure here. It looks good from my side. Something like this. And then trim. And then put a little throat from a hen feather. I'm going to flip the fly around. Make sure I'm not going to lose my lard there. And then take a little pinch of this stuff. Like so. And then I just have to measure here. So by the way, this is a size 10 saltwater hook. And this is supposed to be one of the standards for cutthroat fishing in the salt. So
I used to use that for bluegill fishing all the time down in the States.
well, nobody says you can't try it out on a floating or sinking line out at Elk Lake for smallmouth bass. Just because it has sort of posh origins doesn't mean that we can't do whatever we want with it. Okay, well, that throat turned out to be a little bit more sparse than I had planned on. I guess I got a little bit too close. But, we're told so many times sparser is better. So there it is. So here's my little completed professor.
Lauren wants to knit.
Okay.
And standard one. Oops. Oh, well. I like to do 2 whip finishes, but if it's only one, it's only one. I'm going to put a little bit of head cement here. That didn't quite flow evenly around, so I'm going to put another drop on the bottom side. Okay. So that's that fly. If you want, I can go back and do another one. Okay, sorry, this is dizziness inducing. So this is the fly. You can substitute for the yarn I was using. You can use some dubbing. You can use some
Hey, Junjun.
boss. There are many options there. So that's the fly that I thought I should be tying someday, and well, here it is. The other fly that I was planning on doing today, and you tell me if you want me to go and do a professor from the beginning.
Might as well, because it's only
Well, okay.
10:03, so just make sure it's still got.
And when you look at sizes and things, you're told, for trout, you tie these flies, small, you can go down to 12s and 14s, but for the salts, 4s and 6s and 8s, whatever. And I've heard that, well, for cutties, 10s and 12s may actually be a better choice. So bear that in mind when you pick the sizes. I didn't have any size 12 saltwater hooks, or I might have somewhere. I just have to dig a bit deeper. So the smallest I've got available right now is a size 10. But of course, you can just tie it on whatever you have, and that should work. So the red stuff for the tail comes from this is a Schlappen dyed red, and it's a red dye that I actually like. So I keep using this whenever the pattern calls for whatever beautiful red tail. Some of the old patterns go for whatever, red ibis or something. We just tie this in at the standard tying point, a little bit above where the barb used to be. And then to get the body shape somewhat even, when you trim this, you have two options. You can either trim it and wrap over it, or wrap over it and then trim later. But if you like to trim now, trim to about where the standard thorax area of the fly is going to be. So when you wrap up, you get sort of a decent, reasonably smooth underbody. So this is what I'm going to do here. This doesn't have to be wrapped in very closely spaced turns. It just needs to be wrapped over so it doesn't kind of go haywire. Then you want to put on your rib. And again, for purposes of keeping the underbody reasonably smooth, I'm going to start at the front and wrap backwards while keeping the ribbing on top of the hook shank like this. When I get to the tail, I stop. And then I need my yarn. So I can try to see the other option here. So what I did, this yarn is quite thick. It's you can see here it's got 3 strands, and 1 strand is plenty enough for building up this body. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unravel this a little bit. It's quite fuzzy, so it's kind of don't want it to tangle up. Okay, there you go. So here's the yarn, and here's a bit of remnant. I could try. I think it would end up being really very sparsely dubbed. Well, let's see what happens. Because you've seen the other stuff already, so this is synthetic. It's not very soft. It's quite springy. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just twist it on the thread as well as I can. Remember, there is a rib on top, so it doesn't have to be a perfectly tight dub. And you want some of that fuzziness. So push this guy back a little bit. This is where the challenge is gonna be. Make sure that it catches well at the start. There you go. And then just wrap forward. And if it detaches from the thread, just give it another bit of a twist. And if it really insists on not behaving, well, go back half a turn or so. 2 turns. And another way of doing this is you grab, but then it's gonna look non-uniform. So let me just kind of continue in the same vein. There you go. And so now I have the dubbed body. And now I just bury the bit. It kind of goes in a little bit. That's the advantage of the dub body. It's a slightly more subtle ribbing. And these things usually look nicer when they get wet. Or so I like to think. I think I reached the point where I was when I turned the video on. So now the mallard wing. Grab a piece of mallard. Measure it up. If you like stronger markings, you can use teal on this. You get much much darker and more contrasty wing. Okay, so there's the wing. And the throat.
If I cut out, I'm losing power.
Okay. Set the battery in your laptop or
And there is the throat. Okay, I mocked it up. The problem here is that I got myself into a relatively steep head. And I have to make sure that I'm far back enough that I don't end up into the eye of the hook with the throat. So there we go. Put it on here so it reaches almost to the point of the hook. Looks reasonably in line with the plane of the hook. The challenge with this is to kind of figure out how far on your side you need to have it so that thread torque is just going to move it right exactly where you want it to be. And then just go and finish off the head. A couple of whip finishes. One. And don't go too far back because that'll muck up the positioning of both the wing and the throat, and you don't want that. And there you go. That is classic Scottish fly in this particular case. I don't think it was originated by that fellow. There was, I think there were two fishing brothers who were both professors at the University of Edinburgh. And somebody tied a fly for one of them and named it the Professor, and then it just kind of became a classic. You can read up the history of this thing pretty much in any wet fly, any book on wet flies. It's going to have that little story. So anyway, just kind of like it. It's got cool colors, and it's, if you remember what I did last week, it's got almost the same color scheme as the Comox. I've decided I'm going to call this the Comox Coachman because apparently it originated in the Comox area. So it's an island fly, and you know, if it came out of Comox, let's call it a Comox Coachman.
there you go.
It's got polar bear for a tail. It's got floss, yellow floss for a body. It's got white polar bear and a bit of pearl crystal flash in the wing. And it's got a kind of a light brown, but I don't think it matters. Just some kind of a hen hackle there for a wet hackle up front. And this one is a larger size. It's a size 8, and I would like to tie some of these in size down to size 10 as well. That's another one that's very much a classic cutthroat fly up around the island.
You could call that the Professor Savak.
No, I'm not going to do that because I didn't invent any of those things, and the the other one, the Comox Coachman, I think it's mistakenly called American Coachman. And, you know, as we're in the business of renaming things, I thought, hey, you know, let's give credit where credit is actually due.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Comox is also a little bit more the ancestral name of that part of the world, so why not? Okay. What I was going to actually tie today, I thought this is a little bit of a repeat. I've done it in ages past. It's the rolled muddler, which is the one fly that I caught my one sea run cutthroat so far. So I can personally vouch for the fact that it works. And I'm sure you can do better than me on this one. But then again, I only fished for 1 day for cutties. They're just very leader shy, I learned. So light tippets, fluorocarbon if you have the stomach for it. Yeah. Anyway, and small sizes, 10s and 12s, stuff like that. So the thread is a fiery orange. I have this uni thread. Prefer to install my vices at a 45-degree angle so I can see better down. This is where a vice that locks in more than just the standard 4 positions. This one locks in 8 positions. I find that to be very, very handy. Okay, so this is a fairly simple fly. It's got some mallard for tail and wing. And I'm going to start with the tail. Standard proportions here. So any sort of wet fly proportion scheme is gonna work well for this guy. So attach tail. And then the body is going to be tinsel. Now with tinsel, again, I do several different things. I use some of this, where is it? This is size 14. So you want a small size. So 12 is like the biggest size that I would go. 14 works as well. Don't go any wider than that, because if you do that, then your body is not going to come out very nice. But if I use this stuff for extra insurance, I like to take some wire and put a safety rib of wire on top of the tinsel. If you don't like that sort of process, you can use some kind of, this is a woven tinsel that's reasonably fine that I found at the dollar store. And it's nice and soft, and it gives sparkles in all kinds of directions. So this is also a possibility. It's just kind of wide and a little bit bulky. So if you don't want, if you want to go to, for example, I could probably use this on a size 10 hook, but for a size 12 hook, this would be already too big. Anyway, if you decide to go with the ribbed tinsel, you have to put your rib in first. And what I do is I probably, I don't know if you saw that, but I was trying to get a length of wire in there that's going to take me to the front of the fly. You can see it is now nicely hidden. It goes to about here. So I don't have to trim the wire, I just attach it and then I have just the right length going forward there. And then I take my Tinsel, which is one of these gold on one side and silver on the other. And I'm going to, I don't know if I need to attach this to the vise, but just to be safe. So I'm going to attach the gold side up. And then wrap backwards to where the rib was tied on. And then loosely bring the thread forward. Now I don't want to be too close to the head here, because to the eye of the hook, because I need enough room for the wing. So I'm just going to go back a little bit, so more like in a, you know, 1 or 2 eye lengths firmly away from the eye of the hook. So then I start with the tinsel, and having tied it gold side up, now when I start wrapping it, I get the silver side. And doing this, I use a rotary vise, but I discovered that the situations where I actually need that bobbin rest, that number of situations is really small. I can just let the thread hang and just push it out of the way a little bit with my finger to make sure that it's not going to overwrap weirdly with the tinsel. We'll secure the tinsel, cut it off, and then repeat with the ribbing. Evenly spaced turns. Turns over it, and then another couple of turns right in front, so that hopefully will secure my wire well enough so I can helicopter it away. And it breaks off nicely. And now to the exciting part of this fly. I need a wing, and the wing is going to be made up primarily of some mallard, and now this feather is not the most beautiful, so let's trim away some of the junk. So I got a mallard feather. Again, if you want a little darker and more contrasty, there is a teal feather for comparison. I think either one would work just as well. So get the mallard. This is going to be a bit of an unruly mess here. Roll it up a little bit. And line it up with the tail, not going too far. Just a little bit behind the tip of the tails. There it is. Now to end this, I need to do a little bit of deer hair as an overwing. And what I'm using is something rather fine. I picked this up at one of these club sales. I can't remember if it was Golden Rods or Northern Lights, but it's just a beautiful piece of short and fine deer hair. Alternatively, you can go to your backyards here in the Greater Victoria area, and I'm sure that there will be some deer available. You do your neighbors with gardens a favor. Just for the record, I'm not advocating shooting deer in the city limits.
If they don't hear it, it's okay.
So there it is. Bit of an overwing here. I'm going to cut that back rather severely. There it goes. So secure the wing, but do not worry about the waist up front. Just let it spin a little bit. Okay. So now you have the wing secured. And I'm going to grab the waist and trim it, leaving a little bit sticking out there. Now the clump that's left is going to go on top here and lightly spun, like so. Okay. If you think you've got enough spun hair there for a head, then fold the hairs back and move the thread in front of the hair and right behind the eye of the hook. Build a little bit of a head there. And then whip finish. I got my thread frayed, so this is not boding well. Okay. All right. Not a good situation, so let's try to fix it. So the trick here is to fix this without unraveling the fly. I'm going to start the thread again, right over where the mess was. As you can see, that got covered up now. And I'm going to cut this thread off.
You put, you put the wing on, then you spin a little deer hair head.
Yes.
Yep.
And I find it very useful because the wing is quite short. I find it quite useful to just use the waist.
Yeah.
And otherwise I just cut myself another little clump of hair and I just use the butt ends.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I like it.
And you get, fewer operations to worry about. Okay, so this was the easy part. And cut. Okay, now we've got some spun deer hair. And we're going to take some scissors and we're going to try to shape this head. And the idea of shaping the head is to have sort of a pointy shape. So like a triangular head where the apex of the triangle is your hook eye. Try to trim this at a bit of an angle there, like so. I don't know if it's clear or not on camera, but anyway. The other thing is you want to, in the process, you also want to thin out a little bit the deer hair wing. You don't want to leave it, I tried it relatively sparse, but it's the advice universally given about this fly is, just a little bit, not too much, just a few strands of deer hair is all you need. And should you be lucky enough to start catching fish, the rattier the fly gets, the better it is. So don't be too shy, but then again, don't cut everything off. That's pretty much it. Doesn't look like much of anything, but it's a good fly. And then again, I'm going to put a droplet here. Head cement. Just to cover up the exposed thread. If you do this upside down, it's also going to soak in a little bit to the base of the wing, so that'll secure that a little bit better. And that's the rolled muddler.
Here we go.
And this was, I think, another island fly, or maybe the guy was from the mainland. The originator's name, I think, is Tom Murray. So in principle, taking advantage of this last few cloudy and rainy days that we've got, this is a trio of flies that should be all you need for a day out there looking for cutties. And that's that. On time.